No Necromunda game is complete without scatter terrain, but it doesn't have to cost you anything. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make some really simple but amazing looking scatter terrain out of things you quite probably already have lying around the house. All you need is an egg carton and some plastic bottles. The first terrain piece I'm going to make is the classic barrel. Whether it's to add to walkways and barriers for Necromunda, or just as regular scatter terrain, barrels and canisters are really handy to have on standby. They're also really simple to make, and all you need is something we all have lying around the house: bottle caps. I've been collecting these for a while exactly for this purpose, and to make your canisters it couldn't be simpler. You just take two and superglue them together. Some are perfectly matched and make snug finishes, but for others that are differently sized and have different textures, they might fit inside one another and make interesting textures and shapes. There's no right and wrong here, mix and match freely. Just take some superglue and glue around the edge of one half, hold the two pieces together and give it a few minutes to dry, and that's really all there is to it. When that's dry, we have some really interesting shapes. You can see that these two lids are pretty much the same size, so make a classic oil drum, but then I've also played with ones that slot into one another. The bottom half of this one is slightly smaller and fits into the top, and it's just a slightly more unusual sci-fi or industrial kind of canister shape. Who knows what this one contains, but it's probably not good. My absolute favourite is this one, and it literally requires no work. This is quite simply the plastic faux cork from one of those small bottles of Prosecco you can buy in the supermarket. I've been hanging on to this for exactly this purpose. When you paint it up, it looks really convincingly like two canisters held together with steel cable. It's really that straightforward. Now we're going to take all of our canisters and base coat them before painting them various sci-fi approved colours. For these, I'm just going to use Wraithbone as a nice pale base to apply my colours over. I'm going to go and spray these off screen, and then with the magic of editing, I'll be back in a second with 4 base-coated barrels. Et voila! Now before painting them, I'm just going to add a little more texture and grime to the surfaces of these, as the bare plastic is quite smooth. For this I'm just going to use some Typhus corrosion, and dab it heavily over the surface. What this is going to do is just add a bit more texture for when we're washing and dry brushing in a minute, and feel like rust and corrosion from acid rain or general industrial pollution. The far future isn't famed for the quality of its air, after all. Now you're probably asking yourself, shouldn't I have done this before spray painting them? And the answer is yes, I should have, I forgot. I'm now trying to style it out, work with me here, but if you're copying this at home, do as I say and not as I do. With that dry, we're ready to paint. I've moved the canisters onto some corks at this point for ease of painting. You can use any colours you want, but I've selected some that I think feel quite Necromunda appropriate. Russ Grey, Nurgling Green for that classic Necromunda green, and I also use Vallejo's Russian uniform. Nothing fancy here, just load up a brush and base coat each one with whichever colour you want. With that done, I'm now going to shade these with some contrast paints and shades. I tend to use Gryph-charger Grey for the blues, and Militarum Green and Athonian camoshade for the greens, but you can really use whichever colours you want as long as they're dark and moody. I'm just going to apply these straight over the base coats without diluting. Now, usually with contrast paints, you want to try and apply one even layer without going back over what you've painted to minimise brush marks. But here it doesn't really matter. In fact, it actually adds some more visual interest and weathering. So be as messy as you want here. Then give these a good hour or so to dry. With that done, I'm going to do one last little bit of shading before dry brushing up, which is adding some rust. And for this, I'm just going to use some simple red and yellow craft paints. I mix these together in a glass jar and add loads of water to make a homemade orange wash. Really dilute this down more than you'd think. I always have a huge pre-made jar of this to hand, as it's my go-to rust wash for all my terrain and costs next to nothing to make. It's not Necromunda terrain if it's not absolutely plastered with rust. So you can see here how it's a really thin wash consistency, and I just splodge that all over. Put on as much as you want, it dries a lot more subtly than it looks now, but leaves a really amazing streaky rust finish. Just work your way around all the barrels and slop it on, and if it leaves dripped marks or splashes, that's perfect, as we want this to be messy. Again, give this a good while to dry. Now we could leave these here, but I'm going to dry brush them lightly just to bring back some colour and emphasise the raised areas. For the blue, I'm using Blue Horror, and I'm just going to dry brush that on, dropping the piece almost instantly. That part's entirely optional, of course. This final dry brush is also entirely optional, but does make a big difference to the finished look. For the green canisters, I tend to use Ionrach skin, a nice sickly green off-white, and just do exactly the same thing. And now there's one final thing you can do if you want, which is to take some Rhinox hide and sponge it lightly over the surface, focusing especially on the edges where the paint might be most likely to chip. And there we go. It's really that easy to make some effective barrels and canisters. It makes great scatter terrain. You can experiment with different sizes and shapes, and even stack them into larger pieces. It's just a great way to recycle waste you might already have around the house. The second thing I'm going to make are tank traps. These are also really simple, and you can make them either individually or mount several together on a base. For these, I need one thing and one thing only: eggs. Or rather the central portion of the box itself. All I'm going to do is simply cut them out, and you can choose how deep you want the traps to be. I'm going to cut here, for example, and then it's just a case of taking your craft knife and going around. There we go. I've cut them out, and you can see I've done a range of sizes just for variation, basically. Now I could paint these up straight away, but being paper, the various washes and paints we're going to use will soak in and soften it up, so we need to harden these up first. For this, I use Modpodge. You could use a mix of PVA and water as well, but Modpodge is just a ready mixed version of that effectively, into which I've added some black craft paint. This way, it acts as a varnish and undercoat all in one. I like to keep a big tub of this on standby at all times for terrain projects. And all I'm going to do is take a big brush that we no longer love and don't need anymore, and just slap on the Modpodge. You actually don't need too thick a layer. Also, please excuse the hand close-ups here. And there we go, a 2-minute job. It's not a perfect coat, it doesn't need to be, but it does the job. Just wait for this to dry fully, and then we're ready to paint. With that done, our tank traps are Modpodged and they're quite solid now. This means that any washes aren't going to soak in. Now to paint the tank traps, I'm going to simply use 4 paints. I'm going to base coat them with Dawnstone, before washing them all with Athonian camoshade, and then dry brushing them up, first with Administratum grey, and then Ulthuan grey. So, quite simply, I'm going to begin by providing a nice solid base coat of Dawnstone all the way around. This is a great concrete colour that we can use as a base to work from, get it into all the nooks and crannies. Once that's done, I'm going to wash with Athonian camoshade straight from the pot. No need to dilute it, and then give it a good few hours to dry. And then, a heavy dry brush all over with Administratum grey, just to bring back some of that grey colour. The natural texture of the egg box works wonders here. And finally, a very light dry brush of Ulthuan grey, to really bring out that texture and hit the high points. And there you go, super easy tank traps. Now you can leave them here, but if you just want to push the griminess one step further, you can take some more Athonian camoshade and wash this towards the bottom of the traps, to mimic the buildup of moss and rain. It's a small touch, but weathering like this really adds to the visual appearance and believability of these. And with that finished, we're ready to stop any vehicle in its tracks. You can either leave these as individual traps or, as I've done with a few here, mount them together onto a piece of card to make a larger piece. You can see I've also added a few foam bricks and spare pieces of plastic rod I had lying around that looks like girders, just to add a few details to the base. What I've also done is space the individual traps out so that they accommodate a Necromunda or Space Marine base, making them entirely playable. I hope that this video has given you some ideas for making your own terrain out of literal rubbish. I plan to expand this channel out to a whole series of terrain videos in future, so please do leave a comment below if there's anything in particular you'd like to see. Otherwise, please do like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. It really helps the channel grow and I appreciate it so much. I'll see you next time, but until then, happy painting.